This is a war to the death against the people of the United States. The Committee of 300 wants to reduce us through socialism into a nation no better than the third world countries. Look at this insidious GATT treaty. Do you know that the United States, the mighty United States, has one vote, the same as Kenya or Haiti? And we are going to pay 7/10 of the huge bill. And this organization is going to supplant the laws of this country. One of the provisions of the WTO is that their board will be able to go in and demand of individual states that they change their laws and take us to the courts if we don't do it. Where is the president who said he would uphold and protect the individual states and their rights to a republican form of government? This GATT treaty is one of the most insidious, unbelievable attacks on the United States that I've ever come across. Let me tell you that if the Russians were to drop a couple of nuclear bombs on Washington, and that might be such a bad thing, let me tell you that they could never hope to do the damage that GATT is going to do. Ladies and gentlemen, you have to marshal every one of your resources. This GATT treaty has got to be fully debated. Once before, twice before, we were forced by the one world government, new world order into far-reaching situations that affected the national life and the character of our people without a national debate. The first one was the so-called United Nations question mark treaty. In 1946, this treaty was forced through the Senate by an exercise of arbitrary power. Arbitrary power is forbidden by the Constitution. Yet you have comrade dictator Mitchell, the leader of the Senate, saying he's going to allow about 2 days to debate GATT, which is 26,000 pages of documents. That is an exercise of arbitrary power. If we had any men of guts in the Senate, so-called conservatives, they would walk out en masse and say, we are not taking part in this effort to denigrate and destroy the Constitution of the United States of America. And you can imagine what an effect that would have. GATT will be allowed to be debated for 2 days, 26,000 pages, and some of the most insidious things that you've ever seen are in this document, and they all, every one of them, say GATT shall override all the laws of the United States. The President and our senators and our House members are supposed to uphold the law of the United States. If they sign GATT, they're guilty of sedition and treason. Period. That's it. This came as a natural outflow of the United Nations Treaty. I found there that 5 senators, listen to this for a disgrace, ladies and gentlemen, 5 senators actually read this United Nations document. Again, it was 53,000 pages long. 5 senators, and they had 3 days to read this document, and it was then rammed down the people of the United States. I want to tell you that we do not belong to the United Nations. One of the greatest constitutional scholars it was ever my great pleasure to speak with was the late Senator Sam Ervin, who told me there's no way under the noonday sun that we could ever have joined in the United Nations. We did not join the United Nations, and we do not belong to it now. I've written a little work called Is the United States a Member of the United Nations? And you'll find in there, I give you chapter and verse constitutionally why we cannot be. 1965, we had another national calamity without a national debate. The Democrats reformed immigration. Now notice, every time some far-reaching thing happens, then the socialists come along with the reform. It's to reform health, which, by the way, Lenin said a national health plan is the arch of socialism. So now you know where Clinton got his national health program from. He took it straight out of the Communist Manifesto of 1848. They were not satisfied with immigration as it was. The bulk of the people came from those who were related to the Jeffersons, the George Washingtons, the Davy Crockett's. They were not satisfied with that. Without a national debate, without asking the people of this country by your leave, the Democrats in 1965 forced through an Immigration Reform Act that totally changed the face of the United States and will totally change us. And one of the architects of that was the same Dean Rusk, the swine who stopped MacArthur from bombing the Chinese back to the Stone Age, and, of course, Nicholas Katzenbach. I want to give you some statistics. Now, people have accused me, they said, you are a racist. First of all, the word racist is a very modern smear word. If you look in the dictionaries in 1919 onwards, it did not exist. What they really mean to say is you are a racialist, i.e. a person who is proud of your race. I'm not saying this against any group, any nationality. I want to show you how the socialists, without our permission, without a national agenda, without a national debate, will change the face of the United States. In 1984, the people from traditional immigration stock made up 74% of the total population. By the year 2080, less than 100 years from now, we will make up 39.5% of the population. And it goes on. The Hispanics were 9.4 in 1980, they'll be 15.4. The Asians, 2.4, will be 13.3 of the population. In other words, the traditional Americans of the Davy Crockett, George Washington, the people of Monroe said would make a real contribution to America, will be in the distinct minority. And this is thanks to the Democrat Party, who in 1965, without by your leave of the people, changed the rules. And now they've got us blindsided by concentrating on illegal immigration. Illegal immigration is nothing. That's a small problem. The legal immigration that was authorized in 1965 without your permission, that's where the big problem lies. These statistics were provided to me by a man called Lee Bouvier, who was one of the leading advisors to a former INS official. And of course we know that abortion is another way in which the population is being diminished. I have challenged judges all across the country to show me in the United States Constitution, where is there provision for abortion? And I've yet to see. Oh, they say in the Fourth Amendment. Don't you believe it? The Fourth Amendment has nothing to do. It doesn't mention the word abortion. And where a word is not mentioned in the Constitution, it is a prohibition of that word. There's no such thing as free choice. This is a communist doctrine brought to this country by a woman called Madame Calonte. Madame Calonte you've probably never heard of, but she is the inventor, the author and the finisher of NOW and NARL and abortion. It's all in my book, Socialism, The Road to Slavery. Where do we stand now? I told you that we're in danger because the separation of powers mandated by the Constitution are being broken up every day. You now have the idiocy of Clinton having line item veto. That means if he doesn't like something, he can go and veto just that line that he doesn't like. That is breaking down the separation of powers forbidden by the Constitution. Also meddling in trade. The President has no right to be meddling in any treaty whatsoever. That is strictly for the House according to the Constitution of the United States. And I dealt with the Commander-in-Chief situation already. We need to understand the seriousness of the Commander-in-Chief. Lincoln said that if we allow this title, he said, we are then putting presidents where kings stood. And he said one of the most hated powers of kings was their ability to make war at any whim that came to their mind. And if we do not stop this Commander-in-Chief nonsense with Clinton, that's where we're going to find ourselves. We are already there with Haiti, and we are already there with our troops being sent to Kuwait. I want to tell you that The cost of the Middle East peace so far, to you, the American taxpayers, is $38 billion, and the clock is still running. Jordan was given $4 billion to sign this treaty. The other nations have been guaranteed credits and all sorts of things that will bring up the total to $38 billion for this so-called peace accord in the Middle East to come about. Of course, it's doomed to failure, but that doesn't matter. In the meantime, it makes the President of the United States look good. We need to understand something. I told you today there's anarchy and chaos in Washington. That is because the United States government is a government of strictly limited empowerment. It cannot just willy-nilly go making bills. For a measure to be introduced into the House, it has to be in consonance with or in pursuance of something already in the Constitution. If it is not, it is unconstitutional. And I've looked at 3,000 bills passed in recent years, and every one of them are unconstitutional because they were new things that some lighter-than-air incendiary fairy-head liberal said, well, I'm going to introduce this into the Congress. I'm going to have this law passed, like Dinah Swinstein's 19 assault rifles banned. There's no thing in the Constitution that would allow her to do that. Specifically, the 10th Amendment is very, very precise, and I can quote you 54 instances where this is mentioned in the Annals of Congress, the Congressional Records and Globes. The 10th Amendment is a restriction on the federal government. Our founding fathers were very frightened to give unlimited powers to the federal government. Daniel Webster said we must cage them like a lion, must not give them unlimited powers. It is a government of limited powers, but particularly the 18 Amendments. And just to make sure that the federal government would understand this, in the 18th Amendment, there's a little title that's very important. It says they can only do things that are necessary and proper. And I want to ask you, is rushing our troops off to Kuwait to protect the income of the decadent al-Sabah family, whose money goes to the Royal Institute of International Affairs banks in London, is that necessary and proper for the United States to be doing? We don't get any benefit out of that.